I'm Jerry Imel. I pledged in spring of '83. Some of these guys call me Grandpa because when I was pledge trainer, my pledges were their pledge trainers.
My name is Keith Leyendecker. Graduated from Purdue in '88, and was pledged to Reamer Club in the fall of '87. Is that right? Wow, it was a long time ago.
David Guarino pledged in fall of '87 with Keith and Bill. We were all pledge brothers and roommates at the time.
We were a package set.
We were, much to their
chagrin.
Chagrin. And one of the larger pledge classes.
My name's Bill Winn. I pledged with Keith and Dave in the fall of 1987. Got my degrees at Purdue after Jerry in '89 and '98.
Okay. I'm Bruce Croissant. I pledged in the spring of 1986, graduated spring of '88. And I just want to welcome everybody to our happy hour.
Dave, Bill, and I, we met our freshman year in the Cary Quad, and we became good friends. Bill and Dave knew each other before going to Purdue, from high school, and maybe before high school actually. And then I met them on our floor at Cary Quad, and we became really good friends. And then skipping ahead a few years, it was my last year at Purdue when Shar Taylor told us about the Reamer Club early that fall semester, and I knew I had some time to, because I had a very easy class load. I only had classes from 10 to noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I had 4-day weekends and Wednesdays available, and so the three of us said, why not pledge to Reamer Club? I made the executive decision, all right, and so we pledged the Reamer Club, and Dave, Bill, and I like to make things interesting, especially on lineups, and I believe lineups was typically Monday night, wasn't it, for us? And so we like to try to make things interesting, like the one time, and I think this was your idea, Dave, that we made, because during lineup the actives like to get into our faces when we are doing the songs and whatnot, and so Dave had the idea of we were going to make our breath smell the worst ever. So we made the worst garlic bread ever, and we brought it to our pledge class, and while we were out in the hall waiting to be called in, we choked down this garlic bread, and then when we were called in and we were in the front of the room, when everybody got right into our faces, we just breathed on them, and they took 3 or 4 steps back. And I'll let Dave tell the story about the squirt gun during lineup.
There was a small feud between me and Chris Crowell, the class president, for some reason. But we had determined we had these battery-operated squirt guns, so we were going to, get them. So anyways, I told Chris to be quiet, and he didn't. And so I pulled out the squirt gun, and it's battery operated. So I start shooting him in the face, and he puts his hands up to cover his face. So I start shooting him in the crotch. When he covers his crotch, I shoot him in the face, and I emptied the squirt gun just going between those two spots. And everybody else was rolling. It was really funny. He did not. He did not think so at the time.
No. And Bill and I made it around to the back, and we were just providing cover. But we like to make things interesting. We were asked, the pledge parents the night before Inspiration Night, they came to us asking that we not pull anything on Inspiration Night, because we were known to pull a practical joke here or two, while we were pledging. If there was anything needed to be done or anything that needed help with, all you had to do was call our apartment, because one of us was always there, and then that one person, whoever was there, then would go help out doing whatever, whether, if it was BMS related, Dave, knowing his way around an engine, all right, or anything else, we were always there to support the Reamer Club on whatever it was. All right, and we built some great relationships that continued. All right, with Bruce and Jerry. There was a time where there was a lull, but that's where then Facebook came about and started helping us find each other again. Dave, Bill, and I did a couple football games, and then we pulled in Bruce and Jerry, and then we started doing a football game at least once a year, and we picked some good games. We picked the when we took out Ohio State when they were number 2 in the country, and so we had a great time there. We then also picked one game, and I can't remember if Bruce and Jerry were at it, where we had the big thunderstorm that came in during the was it the fourth quarter,
the Minnesota game.
The Minnesota game, we had to evacuate to Mackey Arena. So we always had a good time, and then when the pandemic hit, we all of a sudden that brought us closer because and I believe it was Bill's idea, wasn't it? That we start to have a weekly Zoom call, a happy hour.
We had been doing a group text mostly during sporting events, and we did that for probably a year and a half before the Zoom thing started. We were doing that for a long time.
At least 2 years before the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, probably around the 75th anniversary of the BMS.
Dave and I have known one another since we were in 7th grade, and so we've been getting in trouble since 7th grade. We just expanded our circle of people that would get in trouble with us. And one of the I think it's safe to say Dave and I were fanatical in high school about our sports teams there and the school, and it carried over to Purdue and all of us. And so the traditions of the Reamer Club, it had an appeal. I'm an amateur historian, and that really had an appeal. I love knowing the background story. I love knowing the history, and the Purdue Club is that caretaker of the history of the university. And so when Keith got us into the club,
Sign it up.
He did. While we, like they said, while we would get into trouble and we would stir things up, and we know that we pissed off some of the actives, but at the same time, we took everything pretty seriously. I mean, we were office rats as well. I mean, it was more than just going through the motions. If you walked into that office just about any time, I don't know how it is today, but there was a Euchre or Hearts game, and usually one of the people that you see before you was sitting there in that game, if not more than one of us. Some of us were in touch off and on throughout the time. Always, if nothing else with Jerry, it was a card. Bruce and I had eventually lost touch with one another. But Dave and I, just through virtue of our shared arrest records and juvenile delinquency, we had to stay in touch. And Keith and I...
and your dad too.
And my dad.
Even when I was coming back and through, I would still stop by and see your mom and dad. Even though you were in Indy, I'd still stop through Jeffersonville and say hi to them. So.
David is my long lost brother, and my parents have always looked at him as a son. So, he's truly family.
And vice versa. Bill's dad was my dad left when I was young. So, there were a lot of times that Bill's dad was dad to both of us. And surely appreciated, and he knows that.
Absolutely. The love's all around, and the love is within this group. We came together, and again, it's all because of our time in Reamer Club. When Bruce was moving back to Indianapolis, he mentioned to me he was coming back here, and so Bruce lived at our house for several months pre-COVID, and
rent-free.
Yeah, and that really, he had to put up with me, David. But that, a bond that was close has turned us into brothers.
Yes.
And there's nothing that I wouldn't do for any of the guys that you see on here.
If any of these guys called me today and said, hey, I'm in big time need tomorrow, I'm in my car in 10 minutes.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And they mentioned us keeping in touch. It was Purdue and the Reamer Club that brought us together, and we still, obviously, that's one of our points of focus, but our families are as well. But there isn't a day goes by. I was on vacation outside the U.S. last week, And there were still, I cannot tell you how many messages flying across my phone, and I would occasionally jump in on them. I mean, it's not a day goes by that we're not in touch with one another.
Yeah, there'll be some slow days where it may be only, about 50 to 100 texts. Then there are days when we just go off the rails, and it may be, puns and stupid puns.
About
Like one day.
wishing Bill happy birthday in Hawaii one letter at a time.
Oh yes, that was great. That was wonderful. But there'll be days if we go off the rails where there literally will be, hundreds of texts during the day, and sometimes I have to if I'm working and I'm on a call or a Zoom call, I'll have to silence my phone during that time, so because otherwise it'll just be going off and it'd be like, oh, I'm in the middle of a meeting, guys. But it's good.
How did Reamer Club affect me? So both of my children have gone to Purdue. Well, one of them's a current student, one of them is now an alumna. They both remember that one of their bedtime songs was Hail Purdue. And not just that, a lot of the songs from the Reamer Club song list, they know them, and they had no idea why they knew them. They just knew them all.
All of us were in the Reamer Club and everything like that, but I also want to say that all of us are big ambassadors for Purdue University. I think all of our wardrobe is probably at least 50% or more, especially on the weekends, something that says Purdue. Whether and I know my wife and my daughters, they're like, come the weekend, especially when I work remote now, and so I can wear whatever I want during the day now. But when I was working, at Kodak or Carestream, and I had to go into the office every day, all right, come Friday after work and then Saturday and Sunday, I'm wearing Purdue stuff. And I always was able to tell my daughters when they went to college, I go, you need, those are literally going to be some of the best years of your life. The people that you meet and the friendships that you make, and the friendships that you make that last beyond when you graduate from your school. And so when I think back to Purdue, all right, I don't think back to the classes and the degree I got, even though it was very, got me, to where I am today. It's actually, I think back to the friendships and the relationships that I made there, and then the ones that still continue to this day. In particular, these guys who, like, Bruce was saying, if any one of these guys, called up or texted and said, hey, I need your help, we would drop everything to go do that for them, to be there for them.
So if you go back to the late 1980s when we were there, unbeknownst to us, I can't even remember who wrote it. There was a guy writing a book about Big Ten football, and it was called Big Ten Country.
Oh, I do remember that.
You do remember, because Dave's at a game, and I actually missed the game because I CS 404.
And we were getting our asses kicked, and we were like just sitting on the back of the Boilermaker special waiting for the massacre to be over.
And the guy writing the book sees the Boilermaker special and goes and talks to Dave. And there were probably 3 pages in this book of interview with Dave. And to his credit, he mentions me. Go, bro. And it's because of the Reamer Club. And they talk about the Boilermaker special and the traditions of Purdue. And it says something like there's a lot of history about Purdue, and David Guarino knows the most.
I'm famous. I still have that book somewhere. I have the book, Big Ten Country. So I have 2 cool extra stories. One of them was before I want to say Purdue IU. It was ESPN, Dick Vitale, and we were in the tunnel waiting to drive the extra out. And he's down there just kind of talking. He goes, well, I need a way to make a grand entrance. And I convinced him to ride out to the court in the extra with me. So Dick Vitale, so they did the intro, and it was him getting out of the train to do the intro for ESPN, which was pretty cool. Got to meet Dick Vitale. And then the other one was Service Master Corporation had their national convention in Chicago. And their motto for that year was, I think I can. And they needed a train that could be indoors. And somebody on their staff knew about the extra special. So they contacted the club, and I was extra chairman. And so they paid for Joe Werheim and I to go to Chicago for a week, bring the extra, paid for everything. And then they actually had seamstresses when we got there, and they made a cloth covering in Service Master colors to cover the extra special with. so that it would be in their colors. And so we'd drive the train in down through the convention hall to start, the day. And then we kind of had the day off. We could do whatever we wanted in Chicago, and they paid for everything. And then for the evening dinner and everything, we'd drive the train back out. But they paid for us to go to baseball games. They paid for us, got to go to dinner with the president of Service Master at some restaurant at the top of a building in Chicago that did not have prices on the menu.
A couple of my memories in that way are, one of our members was on the women's golf team. So when I was extra chair, extra was a lot lighter then. So they allowed us to follow her around when they had a competition here. So that was kind of neat. So I have a bunch of pictures of that. And then probably the other, along the line what Dave's saying, but kind of a different way of getting there. At some point, and I couldn't tell you when it happened, but I kind of got this wild hair that I thought, well, let's find out about these traditions. We talk a lot about them, but we really didn't know anything about them. So I literally, myself and Carolee Hartman, basically took a summer and we sat in the archives and Xerox stuff off, and basically every tradition we had, we tried to find something about, more information about it. I mean, we had blurbs, but we didn't really, nobody had any information other than our pledge books, basically. That was it. And so I literally pushed off my thesis another summer and sat in there probably 8 hours a day doing stuff. And we got a bunch of traditions, and it, we got a lot of great information, but what it actually did is it showed the club that there's a lot more information out there. And from that, the pledge classes, a lot of the pledge classes after that, they started making a requirement for them to go and look up and research traditions. And that ballooned into, eventually the club had a book published, professionally. I mean, we did something, but it was not professional in a stretch of the imagination.
So that's one of my prized, I guess, possessions. Is Julie has one. So, but I have one of the first books when Jerry got them printed off on laser printer and spiral bound, and then he got us a hardbound copy. But Julie and I each had one, and my kids were completely impressed because they understand, first editions or whatever. And so they were like, so you guys have a book that was pre-first edition? And we were like, yes. He goes, wow, that's so cool. And I said, our friend Jerry, who Jerry's met all my kids now, except for Shelby. I don't think, well, you met Shelby when you came up that one time. I was like, they were like, and Jerry did that? I was like, yes, yeah. Jerry.
And if you were anywhere near when he got a section done, he'd hand it to somebody to proofread.
Yeah, here, proofread this.
Yeah. And what's sad is I gave, again, that's one thing I gave Bruce. I got multiple copies because we had a guy in the club who actually at the time worked for a publisher, and actually he's the one that bound them for us. So we literally dot matrix printed everything, and it was, there was no index, there was no real numbering, there wasn't crap. It was just tradition 1 through whatever. And we literally printed that off, and he bound those hardbound, and I probably had 10 of them made, something like that. So a bunch of people got those. But that was a lot of fun. So I mean, we, that developed into, like I said, basically a university published book. And I know I've got a copy of it, and I know they've even come out with a second edition, which I have that copy too. It's kind of interesting because I go back now and I look at that, and then I go back to my book and I kind of look and see what's the same and what's different. I mean, obviously the professional one's much nicer than mine, but it's kind of cool to think, oh, yeah, I kind of wrote that up, or I kind of wrote, I had a hand in some of that. It's kind of fun. But I tell you what, I learned a hell of a lot about the club, and there was some stuff that we had so little information on some of the more obscure stuff from the 20s and 30s. And out of that, we gleaned a heck of a lot of information, to the point where I do remember that one of my cheesy versions we donated to the archives. I don't know if one of the professional ones was donated to them or not, but they actually asked us for a copy of it, and we put that in there. So I know unless they trashed it, but they at least had one copy of it. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of neat, to the point to where they were interested in what we found, because we literally just went through newspapers, articles, books, and stuff. I mean, it was it was a long, slow process. But we learned more about the awards, how the awards started, that kind of stuff, and it was stuff that we really didn't have. So I think it really helped benefit the club in the sense that they learned more, you know.
And I would add to that. I mean, I've got friends that went, as all of us do, just because of our jobs. We have friends who went to universities not only across the country but around the world. And I can probably count on one hand the number of universities that have a club dedicated to preserving the memory of the university.
Yeah.
So many of my friends, they're like, "You were in a club that did that? We didn't. Were you history majors?" And it's no.
See, and then what is interesting is, I talk to, coworkers and everything like that, or my friends who graduated high school with me and everything like that, and they went to other universities, and then I tell them how, every week I'm in touch with, my buddies, my brothers from Purdue, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" Like they go, "Oh, I wish I did that with my friends," and stuff like that.
If you want to say what's the importance of Purdue, I can tell you the origin story of our school colors. That's pretty freaking obscure for somebody to be able to do that. And if it weren't for the Reamer Club, that might have been forgotten. Maybe not. How many universities do the president, head coaching of football, basketball, different organizations, they're busy. We met Gene Cady, one of the legends of basketball. He took time out of his schedule when he had one of the top teams in the country. He took time out to meet us. It might not seem like a lot, but by gosh, I bet there aren't many student organizations where he took time out to meet.
So Reamer Club is also the reason I'm married. Julie, my wife, she was in the club. She was a year, I think, ahead of us. We were just friends in college. And she got married, moved away, and then Purdue football sucked for 12 years. And when they were going to the Alamo Bowl for the first time with Joe Tiller, and she was trying to find people to go to club with, again, this is pre-internet, basically, and all she had left was a summertime Reamer Club phone list. Well, 15 years later, nobody's got the same phone number as we had that summer.
Except for one person.
For one family, and that would have Bill's mom and dad still had the same phone number with the same green Bell phone hanging on the wall. And so they got a hold of them, and they were like, "Well, we don't have anybody's number, but we can get a hold of Bill, and Bill will have Dave's number." And so she got that and literally called me the last day in my apartment. I was buying a house, and all that was left in my apartment was the answering machine. There wasn't even a phone. So I just picked up the answering machine. It had a message on it. And so I grabbed that. And my mom lived in Myrtle Beach. I was going to live on her sofa for a month until my house closed, and plugged in. And it was Julie trying to find people to go to a football game with, and couldn't go. And then so we started dating long distance. She was up in Indiana, and I was in Myrtle Beach, and we dated for about a year long distance and got married. Like the big thing with the club was, I mean, we were in clubs in high school and stuff where what you think you're doing is important. But I was at a meeting with Mike Matthews, who was our advisor, and it was the first time we were talking about what to do about the BMS, because it was breaking down all the time on us. You learn how to fix stuff on the side of the road when the train's on the side of the highway, right? But I guess for me, it was the club and the friendships and everything, but that was the first time that the organization we were in, I guess, had bigger purpose. We were doing our stuff and we were supporting sports, but we were custodians of the Boilermaker Special. We were custodians of the Extra Special. And above all else, that stuff always had to be ready. So regardless of what we were doing, and, when you're the extra, whether you're having a bad day or not, or on the BMS, you have to be nice to everybody. That's the job, right? And so that was really the first time that we were part of, for me anyway, that I was part of a club that wasn't just stuff. It was stuff that was important and had a bigger meaning to a lot of people, and we didn't have social media or anything back then, but, as people told me, this is important. And whenever somebody sees the BMS or the special, they need to walk away thinking, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it doesn't matter if you're having a good day or not. That's the guy you got to be. So, taking the things on road trips or with the Extra Special, or, being ambassador for the club or the university, that stuff was bigger than us. And maybe sharing that responsibility is what makes this group maybe tighter. But that was the first time that really hit home. And now as we go on in life and we're on big projects or small projects or whatever, that's bigger stuff. But this was the first taste of whatever you're doing today is going to have consequences, hopefully for the better.